Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I still see the counting going up, but we're going to start today. This is the fourth webinar from our fiscal training webinar series, and today we will be presenting an overview of the California Preschool Counting Reporting Information System, also known as CPARIS.
Can everyone hear Corey? Because I can't hear her.
I can hear her.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, a little technical difficulties this morning with a few people. So hopefully you all can hear me. I see the thumbs up, so that's good. So this webinar today is being presented by the California Department of Education's Early Education and Nutrition Fiscal Services Unit, also known as EENFS, and we're from the Fiscal and Administrative Services Division. So for those that do not know me, my name is Corey Kahn. I am the manager over EENFS, and I'm joined today by the fiscal analysts and managers throughout our unit. So as we have in other webinars, we have disabled the chat box for participants, although you will see EENFS staff using this feature to share links with you all. Our team is committed to being as responsive as possible, but will likely not be able to answer every question today. Please use the Q&A feature to ask questions, and please give us as much detail as possible before clicking that submit button. At the end of the presentation, we have Corey Kennedy. He will be facilitating a live Q&A session where we'll go over some frequently asked questions that might have come through during this session in the chat, or sorry, in the Q&A feature. Or that will be the opportunity where we'll call on participants that have raised their hand. So if we aren't able to get to all questions, we'll take them back and try to reach out to you later. And we will also use them to develop some frequently asked questions. So when you do submit your question through the Q&A, please include identifying information such as your vendor number or agency name. And that way it allows us to track questions that have come in and also follow up with you in case your question wasn't answered during the webinar. So before we get started this morning, and as I announced at last week's webinar, I wanted to take a moment to address one of the most commonly asked questions we receive in webinars, and that is will this webinar be posted? So our office, like we are today, has been recording these webinars in hopes of posting them to our website. And one of our team members, Jenny Tran, has been diligently working on transcribing these webinars. And we actually have one posted that we conducted. It was our first training that we conducted from this series. And it was posted on our webpage. We created a new webpage that is dedicated to fiscal trainings and webinars. And that webpage can be found at https://www.cde.gov/FG/webinarsandtraining.asp. So I saw Jenny just posted that link in the chat for you all to grab as well. So navigating to this page, you will find a table with 3 columns that identifies the date in which the webinar took place, a link to the recording and that webinar's actual name. And then in the last column, it's a summary of the training topics covered. So in the example we're providing on the screen, the first webinar of this series was conducted on November 13th, 2024. It was entitled Enrollment, Attendance, and Fiscal Reporting Requirements, which is also that link. And then the topics that we discussed were reporting requirements, enrollment and attendance source documentation, and revenue and expense source documentation. So webinars are going to be continued to be recorded, and then we will post these to this table as they become available. So now I'm going to turn it over to your presenters this morning, Janelle Otani and Kiana Slaughter.
Thank you, Corey. Good morning. My name is Janelle Otani, and I am a fiscal analyst in the Early Education and Nutrition Fiscal Services Unit. I am joined today by my colleague, Kiana Slaughter, and we're going to be doing an overview of the California Preschool Accounting. I am joined today by my colleague, Kiana Slaughter, and we're going to be doing an overview of the California Preschool Accounting Reporting Information System, also known as CPARIS. Today, we will be discussing the following: the Centralized Authentication System, or CAS, and its function, CPARIS user management and the use of CAS, as well as reviewing the different user roles within CPARIS. CPARIS navigation, including an overview of the homepage and announcement section, the CPARIS functions, such as payment and contract details, transfer requests, reporting, and the preschool reserve. Lastly, we'll touch on some upcoming system updates. What is CPARIS? CPARIS, or the California Preschool Accounting Reporting Information System, is a web-based application built by the CDE. CPARIS is currently used by contractors to 1. View payment status and details, 2. Submit required reports, including the CSPP, enrollment, attendance, and fiscal reports, the CPKS, support contract expense reports, and the annual preschool reserve account reports. Number 3, view projected, final, and audited CSPP and CPKS contract earnings calculations, as well as final and audited preschool reserve account information. 4, submit request for an intra-agency transfer of funds between contracts. 5, submit an intent to establish or request to close a preschool reserve account. 6, view EENFS correspondence, such as preliminary review letters and apportionment adjustment letters issued with the certified reports. And 7, view contract terms and funding information. Our office is continuously working on updates to CPARIS. As new features are made available, they will be announced through a listserv. At the end of this presentation, we will provide a brief overview of the upcoming features. Before we dive into CPARIS, I want to take a moment to talk about the Centralized Authentication System, or CAS. Most of you are probably already familiar with CAS, which is a separate website from CPARIS. CPARIS does not store passwords or information such as email addresses. CAS is where new users of CPARIS will register their username and password. If at any time you need to reset your password or update user information such as your email address, that could be all done in CAS. Please note that because CAS is separate from CPARIS, CPARIS is not aware of the existence of a username until it is added as a user of CPARIS. I'll go over this in more detail in the next few slides. CAS can be accessed from the CPARIS logon screen, and there are 3 links that will redirect you to CAS located at the bottom of that screen. First is the update link, where you will go where you can log in and update your information. Second is the new registration link, where new users will be prompted to create a new username in CAS. Please note that you do not have to register a new username unless you cannot reset the password for your existing username. And finally, there is the forgot password link. Well, you will enter in your existing username, select and answer one of your security questions, and request a password reset email. I want to note that all of these processes are covered step by step in the CPARIS FAQs document, which is posted on our webpage. The link to the FAQs is included in the list of resources we'll provide at the end of this presentation. Now I'd like to go over some important reminders about CAS. First, it's important to remember that your CAS and CPARIS usernames must be the same. You can only log into CPARIS with the username that has been added to CPARIS and is active. When you click on the Forgot Password link from the CPARIS homepage, you will be redirected to CAS, and the first piece of information you must enter is your username. If on that screen you are entering a different username than the active one in CPARIS, you are resetting a password for a username CPARIS is not aware of, and you will not be able to log in no matter how many times you change that password. Another important security reminder is that users must register their own username and password. When establishing a username in CAS, you will be asked to select 2 security questions and provide answers. If somebody selects those for you, you will not be able to reset your own password without knowing that information. More importantly, having somebody else know your login information is not a safe practice. Lastly, we cannot reset your password for you as we do not have access to your security questions and answers. Now, let's talk about the various CPARIS user roles. When a new user is added to the system, at least one user role must be assigned. A user role tells the system which functions a user may have access to. There are currently 4 user roles. The first is agency admin. These users are the primary administrators for managing CPARIS users at an agency. At least one agency admin user is required, but more than one is highly encouraged. An agency admin user will go into the user management menu to add new users, deactivate users no longer with the agency, and add or remove user roles for existing users. Agency admins are the only users who can view the user management tab, which is where they will go to perform these functions. Agencies are responsible for adding their staff to the system. For security purposes, the CDE does not typically add users or assign new user roles on behalf of agencies, particularly when staff members are on leave or are not currently listed in CPARIS. It is the responsibility of agency admin users to manage CPARIS users at their agency, which is why we advise on having more than one agency admin user. In cases where one or all agency admin users have left the agency, contractors should then reach out to their fiscal analyst to request CPARIS access. The second is the authorized representative. These users can view payment information, enter report data, and they are the only users who are allowed to certify a report is accurate and complete, thereby submitting it to the CDE. Please note that those assigned to this role are the users who will receive emails from their fiscal analyst. The third role is the data entry representative. These users can view payment information and are also allowed to create the enrollment, attendance, and fiscal reports and the support contract expenses reports. They can enter data in all sections of the report, however, they cannot certify the report. And finally is agency staff. This is a view-only role, and these users can view payment information and report data, but they cannot enter in data or certify reports. As we went over on the last slide, specific user roles are assigned based on the function in the system. CPARIS users must be assigned at least one user role. When a new user is added, CPARIS automatically assigns the default role, which is the view-only agency staff. Once a new user is added, the agency admin has the option of adding any additional roles if needed. It's important to keep in mind that if you accidentally deactivate a user, once they are reactivated, the only role they will have is the view-only agency staff. If they had other roles prior to the deactivation, you will need to add those roles again. A user of CPARIS can have more than one user role assigned. For example, an agency admin user can also be an authorized representative. But again, the requirement is at least one user role is assigned to each user. If other user roles are added, the view-only agency staff role is still applied and will not impact permissions. For example, if a user is assigned authorized representative and agency staff, they will still be able to certify reports. As we covered in the last slide, at least one agency admin user is required, but more than one is highly encouraged. Should you only have one agency admin user and that person leaves, you will not be able to manage your own users until that role is assigned to someone else. And to do that, you will have to reach out to your fiscal analyst. It is also good practice to deactivate users who are no longer with the agency. Please note that when new roles are currently added to a user who is currently logged in, they will be required to log out and back in before they can access their new rights. For example, if authorized representative role is added to a user who currently only has view-only permissions, they will be able to create or certify reports. They will not be able to create or certify reports until they log out and back in again. Now that we've talked about the user roles, let's take a look at the user management menu in CPARIS, where these roles are managed. The user management menu is where agency admin users can grant access to new users, add or remove roles for already established users, and deactivate users. As discussed previously, only users identified with the agency admin will be able to view this section of the system. I've used my own information on this slide, so you can see that I am a user whose identified roles are agency admin and authorized representative. My roles or any other user can be modified by clicking on the username. In this example is J. Otani. Remember that the roles determine which permissions each user has access to. To add a new user, the agency admin user will type in their username into the Add a User box located on the right. You'll notice on this slide, you can also see the status and update status columns. The status in this example is active, meaning this user has access to the system. To deactivate a user, you will click on the Inactivate link in the Update Status column. Once an agency admin user has searched for the new username and successfully added the user, a new screen will appear. As I mentioned earlier, the default user role when new users are added or when users are reactivated is the view-only agency staff role. Clicking Save on this screen without selecting any other user role will mean that this user has view-only rights. The agency admin will designate the appropriate user roles by checking the active box next to the specific user role. Remember, the 4 different user roles are agency admin, agency staff, data entry representative, and authorized representative. We just covered the different user roles in a previous slide, but note that an agency admin will also find a description of these roles of each user type in this approval step under the description column. If you wish to make this user a data entry representative, for example, clicking the data entry representative box and clicking the save button will activate that user role. Remember that if you add a role to a user that is currently logged into CPARIS, they will need to log out of the system and back in before they can see their new rights. Now that we've covered user roles, we'll go over the system and its features. Once a new user has been added, CPARIS can be accessed directly using the following link: https://cparis.cde.cparis/logon.aspx, and we will drop that link in the chat now. Once logged in, this is the landing page for contractors accessing CPARIS. On this homepage, you will find the details of the latest payment issued to your agency, as well as the announcements and links to the CPARIS user manual and CPARIS FAQs. The announcement section located on the right is periodically updated and is where you will go to find information about important system updates and new features that are added in the system. From this page, you will also be able to navigate to the different menus: payments and billings, agreements, reporting, preschool reserve, and user management. Throughout this presentation, we will be referring to these sections as menus. Clicking on most of the menus will result in a drop-down menu appearing, which we will refer to these items and the drop-down menu as submenus. Now let's take some time to provide an overview of what can be found within the different menus. The Payments and Billings menu contains the Payments and Billings and the Payments by Agreements submenus. This section of the system was recently updated as part of our ongoing system improvements. While the menu references Payments and Billings, the Billings feature is not yet available. This is currently on the list of future updates that will be discussed at the end of this presentation. When users select the Payments and Billings submenu, a list of your agency's payments will appear. Navigating to this section allows users to view contract payments and allocations made outside of contract, including the Cost of Care Plus rate, transitional subsidy, temporary rate increases, and rate supplements. This is a new update that we just launched in October 2024. Being able to view allocations paid outside of contract is an exciting update, as previously, contractors were only notified of payments via an email from the fiscal analyst. There wasn't a dedicated place where they can view all the payments. Contractors will continue to be notified via email when an allocation is made outside of contract. These payments can now be viewed at any time through CPARIS. You will be able to determine which payments are contract payments and which payments are allocations outside of contract by the invoice ID. Specifically, any payment that has an invoice ID beginning with PR is associated with the contract payment. In this example, the first payment listed as PR-2024-0303-X4310 is a contract payment. Any invoice ID that does not begin with PR can be assumed that is an allocation outside of contract. Contractors can match the email previously sent by the fiscal analyst to the payment in CPARIS to determine the purpose. In the same example, the invoice ID of the second payment is April through June 24 Cost of Care Plus. As its name suggests, this is a Cost of Care Plus payment that was advanced to the contractor for April through June services. From this list, you will also be able to view individual payment details, such as the payment amount. In this example, the contractor has a $25,000 contract payment, as well as the $21,583 payment that was paid outside of the contract. You will also be able to see the payment date. You can see that the contract payment was paid on October 3rd, 2024, and the out-of-contract payment was paid on March 21st, 2024. Next is the payment status. In this example, both payments have the status of paid. Payments will either have a paid date, indicating the payment has been made via the contractor's preferred payment method, or it will say pending, meaning that the analyst has authorized a payment and is currently in process. Payments can be filtered by type. So for example, if you want to view only the payments made outside a contract, you will select the type drop-down and choose allocations outside of contract. Contractors will also be able to click on the invoice ID to view the funding information and PCA breakdown for all payment types. When users select the Payments by Agreements submenu, it will automatically take you to the Agreements menu shown on the next few slides. Now let's take a look at the Agreements menu. In this menu, you will find the following submenus. Agreements is where users can view contract terms and payments by fiscal year. And transfer requests for funding is also the next submenu where requests to transfer intra-agency funding can be submitted. I will first go over what can be found in the Agreements submenu. The Agreements section was also part of our most recent update, allowing contractors to view contract terms. Before this update, these terms were found on the contract face sheet, which was emailed to the authorized contract signers, and this information was not visible in CPARIS. Navigating to this page will allow you to view a list of contracts by fiscal year, shown in the Agreement Start Year column. The contract number, shown in the Agreement Number column. The contract MRA from the most recently executed amendment is found in the Agreement Amount column. You will be able to select an agreement number where you will find the contract terms and agreement details. We will assume that I clicked on the first agreement in this list, CSPP 4999. Clicking on the contract number from the agreements list will navigate the user to this section shown on this slide. I want to call your attention to the tabs visible here. The default tab selected is Detail. In the Detail tab, you will find the contract terms and agreement details for the most recently executed amendment for that particular contract. You will find the contract amendment number. In this example, the amendment number shows 2, which indicates that these are the terms from the second contract amendment. Next, you will find the MRA stated from the stated amendment number, which is 1,694,278 in this example. Next, you will find the contract status of the agency, which will either be clear, provisional, or conditional, and it is clear in this example. Next, you will find the minimum days of operation, or MDO, which states 180 days. Finally, at the bottom, there is the the funding information and PCA breakdown. Based on the table, this contract was entirely funded by PCA 23038. You will also be able to click on service counties to view the service counties associated with this contract. The service counties determine the counties that are visible for the enrollment reporting and the enrollment attendance and fiscal reports for the current fiscal year. You'll notice that there is another tab next to the detail titled Payments. In the Payments section, you will be able to find information for all payments to the contract by PCA. Going back to the Agreements menu, you will find the option to request a transfer between your CSPP and your agency's General Child Care or CCTR contract. The CSPP CCTR transfer process is only available to non-LEA contractors who hold both contract types, excluding meaning contractors who are not school districts, county office of educations, or community college districts. During transfer periods, users can navigate to the Transfer Requests for Funding submenu and submit the CSPP CCTR transfer request. Clicking this submenu will take you to the Transfer Requests for Funding page. It will list the eligible CSPP contract. Please note that CCTR contracts will not be listed, and contractors should reach out to the California Department of Social Services for more information on how to submit corresponding CCTR transfer requests. Outside of the transfer periods, users can still navigate to this menu, but the transfer form will not be viewable, and a message stating that your agency has no current agreements that are eligible for a transfer request at this time will appear. More information on the CSPP CCTR transfer process will be discussed during the Transfer of Funds webinar scheduled for next week, December 18th, 2024, from 11:30 to 12:30. And now I will turn it over to my colleague Kiana, who will provide a more detailed overview of the CPARIS reporting.
Thank you, Janelle. My name is Kiana, and I will be going over CPARIS reporting and preschool reserve menus. And I will also be providing CPARIS resources and a list of future updates to the system. First, let's take a look at the reporting menu and definitions. The options in this menu allow contractors to access the enrollment, attendance, and fiscal reports for CSPP contracts that are required to be submitted on a monthly or quarterly basis. Those of you with CPKS contracts will also find support contract expenses reported here. There are various submenu items in this section, which we will go over in more detail over the next few slides. The next few slides will display a table which breaks down the various submenus, providing a purpose of the submenu and the content and an example when applicable. On this slide, I'll review the first two submenus, which are related to reporting. We have current report forms, which will display a list of currently due reports. For example, a contractor on clear status is required to report quarterly. So if they navigate to this section at any time in October, they will see only their September report here. Clicking on a report from this screen allows users to begin to enter data in the report. Once a report is saved, it becomes a draft. Draft reports are not considered submitted until they are certified. At the end of the fiscal year, current reports is also where contractors with a preschool reserve account will find the required preschool reserve account activity report at the end of the fiscal year. And then we have all report forms, which will show all open reports regardless of requirements. Using our previous example, in October, while a contractor on clear status is only required to report quarterly. In all report forms, they would see July, August, and September reports. This allows contractors that are not required to report monthly, but choose to report monthly, the ability to access monthly reports. As with the current report section, clicking on a report and saving data creates a draft version of the report. The next three submenus are related to the certification of reports. The certification preview section allows users to review the report and associated messages. Please note this section of the system is currently undergoing system improvements. The certified data section is used to certify reports that have been saved with any data. Not all reports listed here may be able to be certified. For example, if an enrollment, attendance, and fiscal report has been created, but not all tabs have been saved, or if there's an error in the report, such as higher days of attendance than enrollment, the report will be visible here, but cannot be certified. I also want to note that each fiscal year, there is a form that is required to be submitted prior to certifying any reports, including prior year reports. This form called the Certification of Assurances, or COA, which becomes due on July 1st of every year. The COA is a statement acknowledging certification of reports is considered an electronic signature. If the COA is due and has not been completed, it will automatically display upon navigating to this section, and users will not be able to view the certified data screen, and therefore cannot certify any prior or current year reports until it is completed and saved. The certified report section will show the most recent versions of certified reports. This is where contract earnings calculations and associated letters can be viewed once they are approved by your fiscal analyst. The last submenu under the reporting menu is related to audits. The audit report section will show the audited reports, associated earnings calculations, and correspondence related to the process audit. In a moment, I'll also review the audited report and contract earnings calculation. Okay, so once a report is certified, your fiscal analyst will review and approve it, provided it is acceptable. Approval of the report allows the earnings calculation and letter to become visible to you. As I said on the previous slide, certified report submenu is where contractors will go to view approved contract earnings calculation and letter generated from a certified report. Reserve reports and associated letters can be found in another section of the system I'll discuss in a moment. In the certified reports submenu, the system defaults to displaying all previously certified reports, which for some of you can be a lengthy list. This section of the system allows you to filter the displayed reports by fiscal year or by contract type. So for example, if you wanted to see a list of only fiscal year 24-25 reports, you would select the fiscal year in the fiscal year dropdown, then click search. You can access any given contract earnings calculation or letter by clicking on the links in the earnings calculation column. CSPP earnings calculations were previously provided via email from the fiscal analyst. However, starting in fiscal year 22-23, they are available in CPARIS to view and no longer emailed. CPKS earnings calculations are viewable in CPARIS starting with fiscal year 23-24 contracts. At this time, revision and recertification of previously certified reports makes the prior version no longer visible in the system. For example, if you certify a September report on October 20th and your fiscal analyst approves the report, then you revise the report on November 1st and that revised report is approved. The version you certified on October 20th, along with the calculation and letter, can no longer be seen. We are expecting to launch version history in the coming months, but until this functionality is available, it is strongly encouraged you print or print to PDF any certified reports and corresponding earnings calculation and letters for your records. Okay, so next we'll review the audit report section, which is applicable only to non-LEA contractors who are required to submit an annual audit to CDE's Audit and Investigations Division, or ANI. Note that LEAs, meaning school districts, county offices of education, and community college districts do not submit their audits to ANI. So this section is not applicable to those contractors. At this time, this submenu is visible to anyone regardless of agency type, although we expect that will be an update we make in the future. LEA contractors navigating here will simply see there is no data. Our office built the audit report section of CPARIS to allow non-LEA contractors to view the audited enrollment, attendance, and fiscal reports, associated calculation and letters in CPARIS, rather than receiving them via email after they were calculated in our old system. The functionality was built first for fiscal year 22-23 CSPP audited reports and will be extended to fiscal year 23-24 CPKS audited support contract expenses reports. Once the fiscal analyst has received the non-LEA audit from ANI and processed it in CPARIS, the information becomes visible to the agency users in the audit report submenu. The audit reports, earnings calculation, and letters are similar to the format of reports submitted throughout the year. With a few minor changes, I'll review. Contractors can view the audited report in the column titled Certified Report and can view the earnings calculation and letter under the earnings calculation column. Let's assume we wanted to view the audited enrollment, attendance, and fiscal report. You would do so by clicking on the link, which in our example is titled CSPP 2233 Audited Enrollment, Attendance, and Fiscal Report. So once the user clicks on the audit report link, they will be taken to another screen where they can view the audited enrollment, attendance, and fiscal reports. Audited reports are generated by your fiscal analyst as they process each audit. As I mentioned, there are differences from the reports you submit throughout the year. In this slide, we will look at the Finalized Calculation tab. The information I'm about to describe is applicable to all three tabs of the audited report. First, the column to the left is called Cumulative per June Report rather than Cumulative prior period. The data reflected here came from the Certified June Enrollment, Attendance, and Fiscal Report and was the starting point for the audit. Next, the middle column is the Audit Adjustments column, rather than the current period column you see throughout the year. In this column, you will see negative and positive adjustments that were made by the CPA or by by the Audits and Investigation Division during the audit. We are displaying the Final Calculations tab on this slide. Specific adjustments to enrollment, revenue, or expenses can be found in the other tabs on the line they were adjusted. The third column is now the audited cumulative total rather than the cumulative fiscal year. I also want to point out one field that is not found in the reports you submit to us. That is the non-reimbursable cost field. If any costs were disallowed during the audit, they will be reflected here as a positive. However, the calculation will remove them from your total expenses. So next, we will navigate to the Preschool Reserve menu. In this menu, you'll see the following submenus: Reserve Account Reports, Establish Reserve Account Close Request. So let's assume that the user clicked on the Reserve Account Report submenu. On this slide, you'll see the reserve account report section. Users with a preschool reserve account will see several listed items listed here, including the certified request to establish the reserve, if that request was submitted in fiscal year 21-22 or any subsequent fiscal years. Contractors who have had a reserve account established before fiscal year 21-22 contract year will not see a copy of their original request to establish a reserve account in CPARIS. Then certified preschool reserve account activity reports. In this example, the user can view their fiscal year 22-23 and fiscal year 23-24 preschool reserve activity report. Preschool reserve account status reports generated by the fiscal analyst and the associated letter. These will reflect the ending reserve balance as well as any transfers into the reserve that were calculated by the enrollment attendance and fiscal report earnings. Applicable only to non-LEAs, you can also find an audited preschool reserve preschool reserve activity report and the audited status report with the final fiscal year ending reserve balance and final calculation of any transfer to the reserve. Note that once the audit is processed, that fiscal year's preschool reserve status report, which was based on the reserve account activity report submitted by the contractor at the end of the fiscal year, would display an approval status of approved obsolete, since that report has been replaced by the audited version. Contractors who wish to open or establish a preschool reserve account will click into Establish Reserve Account and submit the Established Preschool Reserve Account request form. Contractors who wish to close their preschool reserve account will submit the Preschool Reserve Account Close Request form. And then more information and details will be discussed in next week's preschool reserve account webinar, which will be held on December 18th from 10 to 11. So as I mentioned a draft report status early in the presentation, and I wanted to take a moment to talk about the different report statuses, what they mean and where to find them. First, the non-status reports with a non-status have not been created, meaning no data has been saved. This status will only be found in the current report forms and the all report forms submenus. For example, on October 1st, a contractor on clear status is ready to create the September report. When they select the current report form submenu, they will see the September report with a non-status. Then we have the incomplete status is applicable only to enrollment, attendance, and fiscal reports. This status indicates that the report has been created, but not all tabs have been saved in order. These reports have 3 tabs: enrollment and attendance, fiscal, and finalized calculations. Because the data flows from the first 2 tabs into the third, they must be saved in order. This status is visible to the current report forms, all report forms, certification preview, and certified data submenus. Reports that are in incomplete status cannot be certified. So reports in draft status reports in draft status may be ready to be certified, provided there are no errors. This status is also visible in the current report forms, all report forms, certification preview, and certified data submenus. CPARIS assigns the status of certified once reports are certified. The certified obsolete status means action is required. Both enrollment, attendance, and fiscal reports and support contract expenses reports contain data that flow from one period to the next. For example, let's say a contractor has 2 enrollment, attendance, and fiscal reports that were certified, September and December. The September report was the first report of the year. Once that report was certified, The current period data from both the enrollment and attendance tab and the fiscal tab became the starting point for the December report. When the December report was created, the September data appeared in the first column of the report, which is the cumulative report data column. Contractors may find throughout the year that previously certified reports need to be revised. In our example, let's say after the December report was certified, they realized there was a reporting error in September, so they made edits to the report and recertified it. Because they changed data that flowed into December report, certification of the revised September report caused the December report to become certified obsolete. Before this contractor could certify any subsequent reports, like their March, they would need to save each tab of the December report in order and then recertify that report. Finally, the approved obsolete status, which was discussed on the last tab. This is an approval status that is only applicable to preschool reserve account status reports for non-LEA contractors with a processed audit. Okay, report period statuses. Reports may be edited throughout the year after they have been certified. However, there will come a point where a report is no longer editable. The final date a report may be edited depends on the contractor type. Report period statuses can be viewed only in the certified report submenu. The report period status of open indicates the report is able to be edited and recertified. The report period status of closed means the report cannot be revised. If the report period status is closed, you may contact your fiscal analyst to request the month's report or be reopened for revisions. Please note that reports may not be able to be revised. Contractors should refer to the yearly June year-end reporting reminders letter posted on the EENFS webpage for further information. On the next slide, I'll preview the steps to edit a certified report. When a contractor wishes to revise a previously certified report, they must go to the certified reports submenu found under the reporting menu. The certified reports listing will appear, and you can edit a report by clicking on the edit report hyperlink in the edit column. Remember from earlier in the presentation, you can filter this page by fiscal year or contract type to more easily find the report you are wishing to revise. Let's say a contractor wants to revise enrollment data for September report. In this example, the September report was certified on October 20th, as indicated on the last updated date. To open this report for editing, the user would click the edit report link in the September report row. Clicking on the edit report links opens the report as it was previously certified, September in our example, allowing the user to edit the data. In the report, users will see the current period column populates the data that was submitted on the previously certified version. The user can type over a previously certified number in the current period column, or they can enter a number where one had not been included in the original certified report. This data can be edited or deleted as needed in both the enrollment and attendance tab as well as the fiscal tab. As with the initial version of a report, users can save a draft copy if they are not ready to submit the revised report. Once they have finished making all necessary edits, they must save each tab in order: enrollment and attendance, fiscal, and finalized calculations. This must be done regardless of whether both tabs were modified. Saving all three tabs will create a new September report in draft status, visible to the authorized representative in the certification preview and certified report submenus. Provided there are no errors, any user with the role of authorized representative must certify the revised September report. I also want to note that the CPARIS user manual outlines these report revision steps. Let's walk through an example. Let's say a contractor wants to revise enrollment data for a September report. Starting in the reporting menu, they would select the Certified Report submenu. Remember from earlier in the presentation, you can filter this page by fiscal year or contract type to more easily find the report you are wishing to revise. In the snip at the bottom of the slide, you can see the column to the right is called Edit. You can see in our example, the September report was certified on October 20th. To open this report for editing, the user would click the Edit Report link. Clicking on that link opens the September report as it was previously certified, allowing them to edit the enrollment data. They can type over a previously certified number, or they can enter a number where one had not been included in the original certified report. Once they are ready to submit the revised report, they must allow the normal report process of saving each tab, even though in this example, they only modified the enrollment and attendance tab. Saving all three tabs will create a new September report in draft status. Visible to the authorized representative in the certification preview and certified reports submenus, provided there are no errors, any user with the role of authorized representative can certify the revised September report. Now let's talk about the CPARIS resources that are available. EENFS has a web page dedicated to CPARIS resources. This information can be found on our EENFS website at https://www.cde.ca.gov/FG/AA//CPARIS homepage.asp. Included at this website are the link to access CPARIS, the link to access CAS, the CPARIS user manual, which was last updated in August 2024, the CPARIS frequently asked questions, and the contract earnings calculation supplementary guide, which I'll discuss in a bit in more detail. Of course, you can also reach out to your assigned fiscal analyst if you have any questions about navigating CPARIS. So the contract earnings calculations supplementary guide was developed by EENFS as a resource for contractors. The purpose of this document is to provide early education contractors with information they can use when reviewing the contract earnings calculation in CPARIS. Contract earnings calculations type reviewed in this document are the CSPP contract earnings calculation projection, the CSPP contract earnings calculation, the final, and the CSPP audited contract earnings calculation, and the CPKS contract earnings calculation. While the majority of the lines on the calculations display a formula, the guide provides an additional information to help explain the purpose of each line and what information from the report is being used, or explains the calculation in more detail. For example, on this slide, we are displaying a section of the CSPP earnings calculation. Focusing on the line total certified adjusted days of enrollment, there is no description for the field. When reviewing the calculation, a contractor can refer to the contract's earning calculation supplementary guide for additional information, which in this example clarifies where the data comes from in the report. Matching the CPARIS field name to the section of the supplementary guide, a contractor can receive clarification that the total certified adjusted days of enrollment is the total certified adjusted days of enrollment minus total certified adjusted days of enrollment from the report. If a contractor is reporting certified enrollment in multiple counties, This number will be the sum of all reported enrollment. Next, I'll talk briefly about future updates planned for CPARIS. We provided an overview of the payments and billing menus earlier in the presentation. In the coming months, we will be releasing an update to the system that will allow contractors to view billings. These will be contract overpayments as well as any billings related to allocations outside of the contract. Once the updates, one of the updates we are working on is the ability to for agency users to view version history for certified reports. Once this update is available, users will be able to see all previously certified reports, which will eliminate the need to PDF reports as they are submitted. We are also working on an update that will display amendment version history in the agreement submenu, rather than just the mostly recently executed amendment. And finally, there will be a new section of the system where users can view all correspondence for their contracts. Limited correspondence is currently viewable in various sections of the system, such as in the certified report submenu of the preschool reserve menu. That correspondence will still be visible in those sections of the system, but the coming correspondence section will allow users to more easily select the letter they would like to view and also view letters not currently visible in CPARIS all in one location. Once launched, the correspondence section will be visible in the agreement submenu upon selection of the contract, and will display letters such as apportionment adjustments, payment withhold, notices of overpayment, LEA contract closures, non-LEA audit review, appeal right packages, and preschool reserve account status letters. All these updates are made. As these updates are made available, contractors signed up for the EED listserv will receive notification.